So I'd like to start by invoking blessings of gurus. If you can hear me, please just type in the chat window to let me know that that's coming across okay. Great. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I give my pranams, heartfelt pranams, my obeisances to my Guru, who has opened my eyes, which were closed due to ignorance, using the instrument of divine knowledge. So this is a traditional invocation that is given to give pranam to our gurus. Interestingly, it refers to a shalaka, which is an instrument described in Sushruta Samhita. Yes, I will. That is used in treatment of eye disorders. We're just getting into the rhythm of our regular Gita classes. I'm going to aim for talking about 3 to 5 verses in each class, and as I mentioned before, we're going to focus on some key verses from each chapter. So we're still on chapter 2, which describes Sankhya, and then there are some verses that relate to Bhakti Yoga specifically, but also to yoga in general. And we're going to, try to keep to the general application and talk about how that applies to Bhakti and, specifically how it can help you as Ayurvedic practitioners and as aspiring yoga practitioners. Okay, so we're starting with chapter 2, verse 27. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, for future classes, I'm going to post the verses that we'll be covering in advance. So if you like, you can go ahead and read those beforehand and note any questions that you want to ask during the class, and then those can be addressed. Okay, and there we go. Okay. All right, so you should be able to see this chapter 2, verse 27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And I am invoking my pranams to Bhagavan Vasudev, who is understood in the platform of completely pure goodness. It is also a meaning of Krishna, who appeared as the son of Vasudev, and who is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita. So we always start by giving respect. It is a process, and I'm sure you've heard this mentioned indirectly before. It's a process that we follow in the Western context. We think of knowledge as something that we can acquire and we can dig for, and we can take it out, like taking gems and minerals out of the ground, and there's no one's credit but ours. In Ayurvedic tradition and in the Vedic tradition in general, we always want to try to take a humble role, and we want to see that we are getting knowledge which has been given, and we always approach that knowledge with humility and with respect to the previous teachers and authorities. And whenever we're in a position of teaching, we always try to take a humble role and feel that I am just someone who is retransmitting that which I have received, and I want that knowledge which I have received to be given as is and in a clear way so that it will inspire others as it has inspired me. So it's a somewhat different approach. You know, even in Vedic culture, we would not even put books on the floor. Any book containing knowledge, we wouldn't put it on the floor because we have respect for knowledge. We consider that, you know, knowledge is a blessing from God. It's something that it's a gift that is given to us. And it's not the end-all and be-all, but it's still something that deserves our respect. So, no, I didn't want to do that. Sorry. Okay, so let's start with this verse. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmada pariharyate natvam shochitum arhasi. For one who is born, death is certain, and for one who has died, birth is certain. Therefore, it is not proper for you to grieve for that which is unavoidable. So this is an interesting verse which follows on to the previous ones. We talked about dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yauvanam jara, if you recall. Just as the embodied soul goes in this life from childhood to youth to old age, similarly the soul passes on to another body at death. And then we also had that verse of asamsidyirnani yata vihaya anyani samyati navani dehi, that just as one takes off clothes and puts on another set of clothes, similarly the soul will change bodies. And we talked about how the subtle body, or sukshma sharira, is like underclothes, and the physical body is like an outer set of clothes. So this is following along in that line of Atma Tattva, and it's a very memorable verse because this is a it sort of summarizes the attitude towards death that a yoga practitioner would have. So, you know, as soon as you're born, there's one thing that's certain, and the very witty American author Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, once put it that the only two things that are certain are death and taxes. And this is what Krishna is saying here. As soon as you are born, it's certain that you're going to die. There is no immortality of the physical body. The physical body is going to die. This is certain. And it's also equally certain that when the physical body dies, the Atma is going to be born again in a new body. So just as death is certain for everyone who's been born, birth is also certain for everyone who dies. It's an interesting question because, you know, from, you know, some religious traditions, there is talk of an eternal afterlife. From the Vedic perspective, there is no eternal in this world. Everything is temporary, but some things can go on for a very, very long time subjectively, sometimes so long it might as well be forever. So, but there is no such thing as eternal condemnation. We suffer, and we may suffer very intensely, the results of impious acts, but that suffering has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then we will again have a chance. Possibly we may need to work our way up through animal species to come back to the human form of life. So Krishna is giving the advice, you know, look at it this way, Arjuna. you have, as soon as you have been born, it is guaranteed that you will die, and once you die, it's guaranteed that you're going to be born again. So you don't lament about inevitable death. It's not something that's worth obsessing over. You know, we take precautions, we treat this body, we treat this life as a precious gift from God, and we try to do all the best things, all the most auspicious things, we still, despite all of our best precautions, there's going to be some day that comes when it's our time, and it's going to be our time to go, and it may come unexpectedly, or it may be something that comes after a long decline, but you know, it is going to come. So it's not something you should obsess over. Focus instead on doing proper actions that will improve your evolution toward perfection in yoga. So that's the idea here. And then what was the next here? And we're going to skip ahead. Now, Krishna talks more about Atma Tattva, and he talks about doing your duty, and he talks also specifically about things related to Arjuna's duty as a Kshatriya, as a warrior. And then he says, I have spoken about Sankhya, and now I'm going to talk about yoga. And specifically, there are things that he is talking about that are related to Buddhi Yoga and Karma Yoga. Buddhi Yoga is referring to Bhakti Yoga specifically. So these are things that can be taken in general to apply to the yoga path. Now this is a very interesting verse. Neha bhikramana shosti pratyivayo navidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya drayate mahato bhayat. Before I talk about this verse, I want to stop and talk a little bit about Deepavali, or Diwali, and the meaning of Diwali. So, you know, the ancient epic Ramayana describes how Shri Ram went into exile in the forest for 14 years, and he was accompanied by his wife Sita. Of course, Ram was an avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu, and he was accompanied by his brothers Ram and his brothers Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna. And his wife Sita was herself an avatar of Lakshmi, the eternal consort of Bhagavan Vishnu. So while they were in the forest, they were visited by Shurpanakha, a Rakshasi, who was the sister of Ravan, the demon king of Lanka. And Shurpanakha, there was some altercation with Shurpanakha where she ended up attacking Sita, and she was disfigured by Lakshman and sent away. And she ran to Ravan and described how, oh, Sita is so beautiful, and Ram would not take me as his girlfriend because he said he is devoted to his wife Sita. But Sita is so beautiful, and she was thinking, oh, I will inspire my brother Ravan. He will want to take her because he always he likes beautiful women so much. So Shurpanakha described the beauty of Sita, and Ravan immediately hatched a plan. He went with his associate Maricha, and these Rakshasas are demons who are shapeshifters. They can take any form they like. They can make the illusion of looking like whoever they want. So Ravan went, and he appeared as a bhikkhari, a beggar, and he, Maricha went first. He took the form of a golden deer, and so he used that form to lure Ram away and left Lakshman to guard Sita. So Ram and Lakshman were in the forest in exile. Bharat and Shatrugna remained in Ayodhya, the capital. And then Shri Ram, while he was chasing after that deer, Ravan came, and there was also Lakshman was lured away. So Ram understood that Maricha was actually a demon taking the form of a deer, so he killed, and in dying, Maricha called in Ram's voice saying, "Sita, Lakshman, come, please help me." So Sita said, "Oh, Lakshman, you have to go." Lakshman said, "No, my brother has told me to guard you. I am not falling for any such trick. Ram can take care of himself. I am to guard you." And Sita made him go. So he had to leave. He drew a mantra border around the hut where Sita was staying, and he said, "Do not cross this. As long as you do not cross this, you will be safe." And he went to see what was going on. In the meantime, this was the plan. Ravan came, and it took the form of a beggar, and he said, "Oh, mother, you must give charity, and you will have to come outside your house to give charity." So he tricked Sita into coming out and stepping over that line, and immediately he resumed his form as Ravan and kidnapped Sita and took her to Ayodhya. So, of course, this is the story of a very long epic, and Shri Ram enlisted the help of an army of monkeys, vanaras, and went, and of course he was assisted by his servant Hanuman. There are so many stories about Hanuman and his great deeds, and how Hanuman set fire to Lanka. But in the end, there was a great battle, and in that battle, Ravan was finally slain. And when Ram rescued Sita and returned to Ayodhya, there was such a reception, because when Ram left Ayodhya, and that is another very long story, but when Ram left Ayodhya, the inhabitants of Ayodhya wanted to go live in the forest with him. They could not even stand to see him go. They felt as if their life was leaving them. So when Shri Ram convinced them, "No, you have to stay. It is my duty. I must go. This was because of a promise my father had made. I must respect the wishes of my father. This is very important, and you please stay, and I shall return." So this is a return they had waited for years and years and years. So imagine how happy the inhabitants of Ayodhya were. Ram and Sita are returning to us after all these years. So there were lights put everywhere. There were decorations. You know, Rangoli is the type of decoration that's done with different colors of rice flour on the ground. It's very beautiful. You can look up Rangoli. So Rangoli and lamps are used as decorations. So just imagine the whole city of Ayodhya was illuminated with thousands and thousands of lamps welcoming Shri Ram. So people celebrate Deepavali. Deepavali means rows and rows of lights. It is called the Festival of Lights. Deepavali becomes Diwali in Hindi, and it is a very popular celebration, but it's a celebration of auspiciousness and the return of auspiciousness and righteousness to what otherwise may have been a very dark time. So that is just a very brief story of Diwali. Okay, now getting back to Bhagavad Gita. Neha vikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So Krishna here is referring specifically to someone who is doing bhakti yoga or karma yoga, and he is saying that there is, if someone makes a little bit of advancement, it is never lost, and it can protect one from great fear. Endeavors on the path of bhakti are neither fruitless nor do they contain any flaw. Even a little practice frees one from the great danger of transmigrating endlessly within the cycle of repeated birth and death in this material world. So this fear is specifically if someone, excuse me, if someone misuses the human form of life, they can go into animal species. Animals are capable of feeling, and they have hunger, thirst, but they do not have the higher consciousness and the ability to inquire into these topics. So human life is considered to be a very rare gift. And if one goes into animal species, one may have to go through a long time of going up. Animals cannot do any wrong. They only act according to their nature, because animals do not really have the ability to consider right from wrong. Even if, like, if you've ever had cats, how they might sometimes they seem to think of mischievous things, or dogs, you left the dog home alone and they were neglected and they just destroyed everything and peed on everything and made a mess. They're acting according to their nature. They don't have the ability to consider right from wrong. It's all about, in the moment, what's the urge. Animals only move up the chain of species. And there is this progress of evolution through the various gunas until one finally comes to, again, the human form of life. But one doesn't want to go through this. One doesn't want to be subjected to this. I don't want to be plunged so deeply into ignorance. I want to go towards enlightenment. And this is the saying of the Vedas, tamasi ma jyotirgamaya. Do not remain in darkness, go towards the light. So tamasi means in darkness. Jyotir is light, and gamaya is you should go. So remaining in darkness is not a good condition to be in. We don't want to be in darkness. So this is why we say we will avoid tamasic foods. We will avoid things that unbalance the mind and increase the influence of rajas and tamas. So specifically, if one does things, if one engages in yoga practices which have a paramartic or a divine help effect, if we are doing things that are connected with Bhagavan and with the Shakti, if we are connecting with the divine and we are connecting with divine power, this is something that stays with us. It will help us. We can die and we will be able to pick up where we left off in the human form of life. There will not be any going down to animal species because we have not wasted the human form of life. If we are going towards the light, we're not going to be cast again into darkness. This is how it works. This is the assurance that Krishna is giving here. So do the things that will help you move toward light. You will be protected from this having to be plunged down into darkness. Okay, it looks like, sorry about that. It looks like there was a little disconnect here with the internet. Can everyone hear me okay? What I was saying is that What Krishna is assuring here is that if we are on this path, if we are on the path of yoga going towards the light, we will be protected and we won't have to be plunged again into the darkness of animal species. So, let's go on to the next. Oh, now here's another very interesting verse, 241. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hinantascha buddhayo avyavasayanam. O son of the Kuru dynasty, the resolute intelligence of those who are on this path of bhakti is one-pointed, but the intelligence of those who are averse to bhakti branches endlessly. Again, this is referring specifically to Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. It does apply in general to yoga practice. And the application here, it's a very memorable verse, because think about this. This is a verse about the necessity of being one-pointed, of being resolute, of having a goal. So if I ask you, what's your goal in doing yoga? And you say, well, I just do it because it feels good. That's not a goal. The goal of yoga should be, I want to move towards the light. I want to move towards enlightenment. I want to make progress and fulfill the purpose of the human form of life. Now here, this is referring specifically to bhakti, because bhakti has a very one-pointed goal. Bhakti, the goal of bhakti is to become free from this world, from the cycle of birth and death, and to achieve an eternal spiritual existence which is full of eternality, cognizance, and bliss. Sat Chit Ananda, or Satchidananda. So, be one-pointed. Now, this is very important, because if you think about something that applies in general to yoga, this is a very useful advice here. Be one-pointed. Know your goal. If you are splayed out, if you are all over the place, then it's very difficult to achieve anything. You need to be resolute. You need to decide what your goal is. This is the advice that Krishna is saying. If someone wants to have success in yoga practice, they need to be one-pointed. And here again is another Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam thaya parhita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhau navidhiyate. Those who are attached to enjoyment and opulence and whose minds have been captured by flowery words describing enjoyment and opulence do not attain the resolute intelligence for exclusive absorption or samadhi in Shri Bhagavan. So again, this is something that is very generally applicable to yoga practice and to making spiritual progress. If we are too much attached, now notice that Bhoga Aishwarya Prasakta, this means if we are attached to enjoyment, to sensuality, it's not saying that we all have to live dry, austere lives of ascetics. There are those who do that. They practice a very ascetic, very austere lifestyle, cold showers in the morning and yoga practice and, one meal a day, a very austere lifestyle, living outside, no heat. That's very austere. It's not necessary that we do that. But it's the attachment. It's the attachment of chasing after enjoyment, and the philosophy of life that says if it feels good, do it. this is what Krishna is saying. If you are on the path of, if it feels good, do it. If you are on the path of chasing after whatever gratifies your senses, then you are not going to be able to have resolute intelligence. And that's what you need for samadhi. Now, if you remember, we talked about what Ashtanga Yoga means. Ashtanga has 8 parts. It begins with Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pratyahar, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pratyahar, and finally, Dhyan and Samadhi. One of them is to be fixed also. The Sanskrit escapes me at the moment. But the point is that the final goal of yoga practice is, on the Ashtanga path, is to have samadhi. And what Krishna is saying here, you will not get samadhi. Now, samadhi in the bhakti path, bhakti yoga or buddhi yoga is being described here, but that samadhi also means to have full absorption of the mind and senses in the divine. Even though the practices are different, in the bhakti path there's more of an emphasis on hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, doing different types of temple activities. These are there are 9 limbs of bhakti, and it does not involve so much the asanas, but there is also the meditation aspect. It's not something that's contradictory or opposed to also doing asanas and pranayam. In fact, there are some practices of bhakti that incorporate pranayam in the practices of meditation that are used. But the goal is the same, and the goal is samadhi. And samadhi is not possible if we are too disturbed by chasing after sensory pleasure. So we just have, I think there's one more. Yes. So this is the last one for today, 247. Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetur bhur mate sangos karmani. You are only eligible to perform your prescribed work, but you have no right to the fruits of your actions. You should not consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your actions, nor should you become attached to neglecting your duties. Now, this is a very interesting verse, because this is opening an entire discussion, which is going to be carried throughout the Gita, about the nature of action and who is the actual doer. So you have a right, you have adhikar, you have a right to perform your duty, what your prescribed work is, what your duties are. You have a right to do that, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. So it's a very important dichotomy here, understanding that although we have a right to do our duties, we are not necessarily entitled. We don't have a right over the results of our actions. The results are either going to come to us or not come to us, and that may be because of our previous actions. And he's specifically also saying you should not consider that you yourself are the cause of the results of your actions. These reactions are given according to what we have done, our past deeds, and our present. What we do now in the present is just a slice of our whole existence. So don't become attached to neglecting. Don't neglect your duties, and don't also think that you own the results of your work. you know, this is opening up a discussion for understanding that I am not actually the doer. I am associated in Prakriti with the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And actions are being carried out by the interactions of sattva, rajas, and tamas. So I'm going to end there. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about, this is a good time. And we also have the forums. I don't know, I have to check. I'm going to follow up today on whether we've split out the Gita as a separate course module or not. Monica was going to do that. And I've been a little busy this past week. But as I said, for the next class, I'm going to post in advance the verses that we'll be doing. And then you'll have an opportunity to read up on those. So now that's a very interesting question. So yes, there may be many other causes. So for example, let's say that I have taken a job and I do the best I can, but there's something else that comes up. And I don't have control over it. So if I am thinking that I should have control over everything, that's more likely to be very disturbing. Because something always comes up. It's the nature of this world. Now, of course, I've worked in technology for 30-some years, and you know, the nature of technology is always people expect things to work no matter what. And it can be very you know, it can create a lot of wear and tear. Yeah, it is living now, and it's doing what we can, and you know, and taking duty. In other words, duty is something along the lines of not just, you know, work like I have a job. Jobs are a good analogy for understanding the concept of duty. So dharma is a Sanskrit word. Dharma, people have sometimes tried to translate dharma as religion, and that's actually a pretty poor translation of dharma. Dharma means that which you cannot separate from the intrinsic nature of something. So the dharma of water is to be wet. The dharma of fire is to be hot. And we can say that the dharma of the Atma, the dharma of the self, is to serve, is to do things for others in a relationship. And if you think about it, whether we are as parents or as partners or as children, you know, there's always something that we have to do for someone else. Even if we go and live in a monastery, you know, we're trying to follow our dharma of connecting with the divine, and we are doing service to others as well. So these are the kind of things that really constitute dharma. But a job is an analogy, because in a job, you know, you have to do the job, but if you work for reasonable people, they understand sometimes things come up. For example, yesterday I went in to work on stuff, and I ended up spending about 5 hours troubleshooting a network problem that turned out to be because someone had unplugged one cable and put it in the wrong place. And it, you know, took 5 hours to figure that out, running up and down stairs and going in different server closets and things. And that wasn't something I was supposed to do, but I was the person who was there to take care of it. And, you know, that did temporarily become my duty. But I didn't get any other things done that I was supposed to. But, you know, that's the way that it is. And the way that life is, sometimes we have to try to do the best we can, to do our duty, to do something that is righteous and proper, and, you know, our endeavors appear to be frustrated, but we should not become frustrated by that. We should not give up and say, oh, well, it's too much trouble, things are just not going my way, so I'm not even going to try. So we are told not to do that. Krishna is saying, he's saying don't do that. Do not just give up and say, oh, it's too much trouble. We still have to try doing that. Now, how does it relate? If we're making a living according to the Gita, you know, how does that relate? Because, of course, you know, our jobs often don't feel like dharma. You know, I mean, I teach the Gita classes, and according to what I've understood, and Sanskrit and Sankhya and Jyotish, and I love doing that. It feels very much closer to dharma. And particularly this, I love doing it, but it's not something that really that, you know, pays the bills for me. It's you know, I have to work. I have a job, so that's something that I need to do. I need to be enthusiastic about work that I do, about, you know, the software engineering stuff. It's not dharma, but the thing is that it allows me to do other things which are dharma. It allows me, you know, to have a house and where we can have a mandir, we can have a sacred space where we can do activities of bhakti. I have a family, and it allows them all to, you know, what I do, what Monica does. You know, we're also doing things for family. Even if it's just you and you're you know, taking care of yourself, you need to do that. There's another verse in the Gita. Krishna says, you cannot even maintain your body without work. It's not possible to not work. It's our nature to do work, to be busy, and trying to not work is very difficult. It's very difficult to control the mind, and it's very difficult to actually make progress. So it's not work that's the problem, it's our consciousness. It's our consciousness that the Gita is telling us we need to change. You are doing your work. This is your duty. So you can even think of it, I have a 9-to-5 job, and I don't necessarily like it, but I can think of it as this is something that, you know, that I need to do. And so I'm going to not hate it. I don't have to love it. And I shouldn't hate it. I will just do it. And I will try to see that there's a connection. You know, even if the connection is that I get some money from this and then I'm able to use my earnings for good purposes, I love that. So, but the other side is that, you know, everybody knows that we're motivated by, one of the things that we're motivated by in a job is a paycheck, because you need money to do things. So, yeah, there are a lot of different ways to look at it. It's a very good question. We are going to be talking more about this, especially as we move into the 3rd chapter and we talk about karma yoga and the yoga of action and the different types of action and inaction and improper action. So there's you know, this is really opening things up to a whole realm of discussions throughout the Gita, in the 2nd chapter, in the 3rd chapter, in the 4th chapter, in the 5th chapter, in the you know, 9th chapter, in the 14th chapter, in the 15th chapter, 16th chapter, 17th chapter, 18th chapter. There's so much discussion about work and about dharma. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate having good questions, and, you know, we can also follow up on the forums, and happy Diwali to everyone. Thank you.